What is up, my howlers? Wolfpack Leader here, and today we are finally going to rank every single Chucky film in the entire franchise. And just be aware that this is my opinion, just based off based off my personal ranking. Not this isn't facts, so you can totally give me your ranking down below in the comments. All right, guys. Well, let's go get right into the video. Starting with number 8, my least favorite Chucky film in the entire series is going to have to be Child's Play 3. I'm not a super huge fan of this film because to me it's the most boring and generic out of all the movies. It doesn't add anything new to the series and it feels really rushed. And that makes sense because Child's Play 3 was released less than 1 year after Child's Play 2. So it makes perfect sense why this film felt rushed and the quality didn't feel as good as the previous two. It doesn't feel like an authentic film that Universal just wanted to make a quick cash grab because Chucky was slowly hitting his peak in popularity. One thing I find interesting about this film is that it does have an interesting premise. The film takes place in a military school, which is the only thing unique about this movie. I would choose a slasher film taking place in a military school over a slasher film that takes place in space any day. There are a couple of cool things I can appreciate about this film is that we get to see Chucky's tactical side since there's a lot of military weapons at his disposal. And another thing that I appreciate about this film is its climax at the carnival, haunted house, when you go to the carnival. And yeah, I think, oh, and also that it's it's kind of the beginning transformation of scarred Chucky with all the stitches on him, because Chucky gets epically shredded to bits at the end. I don't know, I guess that's an epic death for him. But overall, this movie is enjoyable, but I only watch this film if I'm watching the entire series as a whole during a marathon or a binge. I never watch this movie by itself. Next up on my list is Seed of Chucky. If you guys remember my review for this film, I adore the cinematography of the film. It's shot beautifully and stylized really well, but just because a film is visually appealing doesn't mean it's a good film. I don't hate this film, but there are a lot of nitpicks, and I mean a lot, guys. It's not just, it's hard to go unnoticed. But its premise is just, I think the reason why it's such a weird movie is because the premise is so bizarre, and I kind of like that it's bizarre though, because it would have been a very stereotypical horror film, which it kind of is, but since the film is a self-parody, it makes fun of itself to make it more interesting and entertaining. I don't have a lot of things to say about this movie except that it's stupid and fun, but it did ruin the characters and franchise, and because of this installment, it put the franchise on intermission for almost 10 years. There are a couple of things that I can appreciate about this film, and that is its comedy, its subtext about gender identity, and the voice acting is pretty good. I really enjoy Brad Dourif, Jennifer Tilly, and Billy Boyd together as family. It's surprisingly believable and amusing, and their scenes are the best parts of this movie. I really wish this film mostly focused on all three, but unfortunately it focuses on Tiffany and Jennifer more than anything. Coming in at number 6 is Bride of Chucky. This is another movie I don't have a lot to say because the way I feel about this movie is kind of the same way I feel about Seed of Chucky, except Bride is just a little bit better than Seed. But I just think it's weird how we went from Child's Play 3 to Bride of Chucky. Like, who pitched the idea that Chucky should have a bride? Like, surprisingly, it works extremely well, though, and I think the introduction of Tiffany is really good. We didn't need a long backstory to understand the character. She just flowed into the story and lore of Chucky really well. Speaking of Chucky, in this movie, he looks pretty awesome because this film did introduce the the badass Stitch Chucky that we all know and love. This is more like a Mark 1 Stitch Chucky. Sorry, it's hard to say Stitch sometimes. Stitch Chucky, because the Stitch design doesn't get perfected until Curse of Chucky, in my opinion. I think it looks just perfect in there. But I also really like this film has a gothic atmosphere to it. It gives the film an interesting tone. I probably would have liked this movie a lot more if the protagonists in this film weren't so damn annoying and unlikable. I honestly didn't really care if Chucky and Tiffany took over the bodies of the main protagonists at the end of this film, because yeah, I think they're really annoying. But overall, this is a lot of fun, and this movie is a lot of fun. It's just the writing and development for this film are pretty weak. Coming in at number 5 is a 2019 remake. When I first saw this movie, I actually had it ranked a bit higher up on my list, but as I rewatched the entire series along with the remake more and more, I kind of liked it less and less. And it's not that I don't like this movie, I actually really like this film a lot, and I think it's so good that I can even stand on its own. But my big problem is that it suffers the same thing Bride of Chucky suffers, and that's weak writing. It could have had a really great story, and it could have had great character development if the film was longer, and it let itself breathe. Its pacing is just way too fast, and it felt like it wanted to rush to the madness and death, but What it should have focused on was a well-paced transformation story of good to evil. I don't want to ramble too much on this film, except that the kills were cool, the humor was funny, sometimes the cinematography was cool. Both Mark Hamill and Gabriel Bateman were awesome. I love the relationship. And yeah, I think this movie is just enjoyable to watch, and overall it's a fun, cheesy slasher, but I think all people should definitely give this movie a chance. The next film on my list is Curse of Chucky, and I remember vividly watching this film for the first time and enjoying it, but once the movie was over, I was kind of afraid that this movie wasn't going to hold my first impressions after each rewatch, but personally, this film just gets better and better. There isn't a lot of negative things to say about this film, except for that retcon that they did to try and tie in Child's Play 1 and Curse of Chucky. I thought was really unnecessary, and it doesn't make any sense if you remember the details from the first film. But looking past that, it's actually a really good Chucky film. I think the gothic horror in this film is done a lot better than Bride, with the eerie looking house, the lighting, and the lightning with the ominous score all works all so well together, which I think is exactly what Chucky needed to be brought back to fans in all his glory. Also, this movie is actually really similar to the first film, except we get to see new characters, it takes place on one day, and it adds a lot of lore to Chucky. When people say Star Wars was the first franchise to go back to its roots by making a sequel that was pretty much the same as the first film, but done with a new generation of characters, I feel like they give too much credit to them, and I think Chucky deserves it more. Plus, they did it first, but I guess it doesn't matter because Star Wars is statistically more popular than Chucky. But overall, I love this film. It's a great reboot to the series, and they have a lot of awesome scenes. I love that scene when Chucky reveals his stitched face to Nika's sister, Barb, and then he just stabs her in the eye. It's just so brutal and badass. Alright guys, we're in the top 3 now, and the Chucky film that takes the number 3 spot is Cult of Chucky. This movie is so freaking entertaining, and I love how they bring back a couple of older characters like Andy and Kyle. I really wish Andy had more screen time, which is one thing I was really disappointed by. It's funny because there were a lot of choices that I didn't like this film took, but there were also a lot of choices I did like that this film took, so it kind of balances out. I really appreciate that this film took a lot of risks, and some people hated them, and some people are like me and absolutely love them. I'm referring to that soul-splitting reveal towards the end. Some of my friends thought that film was, or because of that scene, the entire film was just a train wreck, but I thought it was a nightmare come true. I've always wanted to see multiple Chuckies running around and killing people, and finally, this film fulfills just that. Other things I really like about this film is the cinematography. It's so beautiful, and I think it might be the best in the series, but it does have competition with Child's Play 2019. I really like the color discordance that it utilizes in this film to make the film even more visually appealing. Like, great job to you guys. But one thing that this film does deserve is that it has the best comedy out of any other Chucky film in the series. I always have such a great time watching this movie, and I can rewatch it over and over because of the comedy. Plus, Nika is a really great character, and I hope Andy and Kyle save her in the next film or in the upcoming TV series. Alright guys, it's sudden death now for the last 2 movies left to get the number 1 spot, and I really wish I could put both of them on the number 1 spot, but sadly, there can only be one winner. This film, the film that's going to be taking the number 2 spot is going to have to be Child's Play 2. I love Child's Play 2 so much, and I could see why other people put that film on the top of their list. It's a well-made movie, and whatever the first film did in terms of kills and practical effects, it whips that movie's ass, guys. But because of this film, I can't just rewatch the first film on its own. I have to watch both of them back to back, if the time is available to me. But another thing I like about this movie is that I really love Kyle and Andy in this film. They're really good together, and it gets me excited to see them reunite in the upcoming TV series. And another thing I really like is the ending. The ending is just, amazing. The fact that it takes place in a toy factory is just super awesome, and I think it's one of the greatest endings of all time, not just in a Child's Play franchise, but in movie history. Yeah, Child's Play 2 is definitely a great sequel. Finally, at the number 1 spot, we have the very first Child's Play. Kind of generic to put the original on the number 1 spot, but I have my reasons, and those reasons being that this film is the movie that made me fear dolls as a kid. I think I can speak for most people when it comes to being afraid of your own toys. But there are a lot of great things about this film, and that is the score, specifically the theme. It's super iconic, even if you only hear it in the end credits. Also, the puppeteering for Chucky is really cool for its time. It still holds up to this day. Like, I've seen movies that have been released today, and they can't even do a good enough job. But it could just be that the original Child's Play had a hunger for creativity and commitment, because controlling animatronics is not easy at all. Another thing that's really good about this movie is the cast. I think they all did a great job. Even the smaller characters felt like authentic characters, despite them having very little screen time. And I can go on and on about the great things that I like about this film, and I still think it's the best killer doll movie of all time. If it weren't for Child's Play, I don't think killer doll movies would even be popular to begin with. It's truly iconic and will probably traumatize kids for generations to come. And that concludes my Chucky ranking. Well guys, I really hope you guys liked it, and I appreciate you guys sticking with me through, I don't know, I think it took me like a year just to review every single Chucky film. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys for sticking with me all the way to the end, including, watching the ranking video. Well guys, let me know in the comments below your ranking of the entire Chucky franchise. I'll totally be interested to see your ranking if some of you guys decide to do a video or something like that. Well, again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Bitch. Hi.